Good evening, members. Prayers this evening will be said by the Reverend Holly Butler, curate at St Luke's Church, Maidstone.
Thank you very much for the invitation to pray for you all this evening. Let us pray. Father of all creation, we come before you this evening, embracing our fragility and flaws as humans, and we seek your wisdom for mutual flourishing of human and non-human creation. In a moment of quiet reflection, we lay aside any troubles of the day or concerns for tomorrow. We bring them before you, those people that we are caring for, losses we are mourning, the other responsibilities that we have, we entrust them now to your tender love and care in a quiet moment. Thank you for hearing what is on our hearts, Father God. In this moment, we lift up to you our hopes and dreams for our world, for our country, for this town of Maidstone, for our homes. We think of people this evening in our town that do not have a place to call home. Lord God, would you unite us by your Spirit to be servants of your people? Would you fill us with your love? Would each counsellor here gathered know how deeply loved they are by you, Father God? Lord, would you bring your miracles when it seems there is no human way forward? Would this evening be filled with your peace and grace in all that we do and say? And may the blessing of God Almighty, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit be with each one of you gathered here, with all those that you love, care, and pray for this night and always. Amen.
Please be seated. These proceedings will be webcast and recorded by the Council, but will anyone else be recording or filming them? I ask so that people at the meeting are aware that this will be happening. I see one hand, I see two hands. Councillor Cleater.
As Councillor Mackay has offered his appointments in the deep-honoured tradition, I reserve my right.
Thank you, Councillor Cleater. One other hand raised.
I was going to say the same. I'll reserve my right.
Thank you. I have received apologies for absence from Councillors Keheally, Mackay and Springett. Are there any others? Councillor Jeffrey.
Councillor Summersgill is on his way here. He's stuck in traffic.
Noted. Councillor Nagy. The other Nagy. Is that for the whole meeting or just late? The whole meeting, right. Okay. Thank you. There are no other apologies for absence? No? Okay. I should now like to take the opportunity to welcome Councillors Houlihan, Nedelcheva and Povey, the new elected members for Harwich, Lenham and North Downs Ward, to their first meeting of the Council. Welcome. Agenda item 3. Are there any applications for dispensations?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no such applications.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest by members? None offered. Are there any disclosures by officers? None offered. Agenda item 5. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? No hands raised that I see. Agenda item 6. Is it agreed that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed? Agreed. Okay. Agenda item 7. Are the minutes of the meeting of the Borough Council held on the 16th of July agreed as a correct record? Agreed. Agenda item 8. My announcements. I can assure you that they won't take up too long, mainly on the basis of the fact that I've actually experienced a degree of ill health in the last few weeks. In fact, to the point it was actually a blue lights and an ambulance job to A&E. So I'm actually somewhat pained at the moment, but thanks for the goodness of morphine, I'm struggling to cope. Having said that, since the last meeting that we've had, and that was some time ago, we've opened the new Oldham Gallery and exhibition at the museum. That was something that I know a number of people in this room are particularly proud of. I know Councillor Harper was particularly enjoying the moment, and so did I, as former chairs of the committee that went back numbers of years for that actual event to take place. Anyway, at that particular event, it was all very hot on the inside, in fact, alarmingly sweltering. And you must remember that we were dealing with one of the hottest summers on record this year. In fact, from the time I had been mayor since May, then June, July, August and September have proven to be very, very hot months. So the next little anecdote's quite interesting, is that after we'd been to the Oldham Gallery, a couple of days later, my driver Ray then takes me to the awards ceremony for long service at Maidstone Hospital, whereupon the chief executive of the hospital comes up to me and says, I don't know how you managed to cope with all this regalia, wearing the chain and a jacket and a tie at the time. Therefore, Ray then says, oh, don't worry, this mayor's quite used to it. More people have passed out in front of him in the last 6 weeks than he's managed to cope with in 1 year so far than any other mayor previous to him. In fact, 6 people had actually passed out in front of me in previous few weeks. So fortunately, the right people were on hand, and I just said, well, sometimes they're called passing out ceremonies, aren't they? Passing out usually means inspecting uniforms and checking whether people look okay, not literally falling on the floor. But having said that, we got through that event quite well, and various other graduations, awards, and various other events throughout the summer, which then took us on to something like the River Festival at the end of July. Again, one has to commend the whole River Festival organisation. Councillor David Nagy, thank you to your team. It's a wonderful festival, it's a wonderful weekend. I would also like to thank Councillor Donna Greenan and Councillor Mike Thompson, particularly for their hosting of our friends and dignitaries from Beauvais and our twin town that weekend. You took over the hospitality of looking after them from the moment they arrived on the Friday until they actually basically died on the job on Saturday night after the fireworks. Thanking you very much for that time and attention, Mike and Donna. You were absolute triumph. Thank you very much. And no sooner had we finished the River Festival, and a week or two later we were swan upping on the river, and we counted the amount of swans. There weren't as many in previous years, which is sad to say. Then we went through a process of summer pantos. I went to the Afro-Caribbean Day and was strangled by a snake. I went to several church and community events, summer fetes, including the Gurkha Nepalese Festival, many choir recitals, several VJ events. I opened a sensory room at Roseacre School, Bearsted, and a few weeks later awarded them as finalists in the Kent Under-11s football tournament. It goes on, a day with the air ambulance, planning the next county show, awards for Maidstone in Bloom. But one thing I really have noticed is I have to thank our street scene and parks teams. Our streets and our parks have looked throughout this summer, a summer of great blight, lack of water. The town itself has been full of colour. You only need to look at the front of the town hall and the area just in front of us. I think the street scene and parks team have done a remarkably wonderful job. And my thanks have to go to them for their displays. So thank you all, please, at the Parks and Street team for our wonderful floral displays this year. They've made the town look wonderful. It's fair to say that I've mentioned a few things in the town. I mustn't forget the country and the rural countryside. I've been to many Gardeners Association events, judged pumpkins, even judged some hot chili peppers. We've had a wonderful ploughing match, as it happens, in Headcorn. And I've been to a terrific garden fork to kitchen fork event in Sutton Valence. I'm going to finish off with the fact that we also have a tremendous arts and culture scene in this town. And not only the town, but the whole area. And I must remind people that it's the Hazlitt Theatre's 70th year. It's also my 70th year. So they've decided to have a party on my 70th birthday. They call it a panto. Anyway, we're going to have a terrific panto at the Hazlitt this year. And before I finish, one of the missions I share, not only with my charities, is to raise awareness for the mental health issues of this world. We had the wonderful baton of hope that came to Maidstone a couple of weeks ago. It was my privilege and honour to carry that baton and escort it from Maidstone United down past the County Hall and then from the Town Hall on its way to Moat Park. As a result of carrying the baton of hope, I've also been privileged to host a play called No One Here Is Me, which is about the devastating effects of suicide and how it can affect families. It makes people realise, it makes people wonder. We must prevent suicides. We must provide a safety net for all those that have experienced major mental health problems. That mission continues for me and will continue. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. I now then move on to the next agenda item. Item number 9, there are no petitions this evening. Item 10. Before the question and answer session, I call upon the Leader of Council to update members on recent changes to the Cabinet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I've made 2 small changes to the Cabinet. One is squeezing past me right now. Evening, Mike. Councillor Summersgill is picking up the Cabinet Member for Corporate Services, and Councillor Rodwell has stepped in as Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Nature Recovery.
Thank you. I have now received notification that Mrs. Kate Cammond wishes to ask a question of the Leader of Council.
Thank you. At a public meeting with Lanham residents last year, the Leader of the Council gave a clear and specific commitment that the Heathland Supplementary Planning Document would not be rushed and would be prepared thoroughly. Given recent developments, can the Leader now explain why that commitment appears to have been abandoned?
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Ms Hammond. A Heathland stakeholder steering group was set up in autumn 2024 to include land promoter, county, borough and parish council representatives. This has met approximately monthly since then to provide local insight and feedback, which has been instrumental in shaping the draft supplementary planning document content. It's taken around a year to prepare this consultation draft, which has been thoroughly prepared. This has included engagement with key statutory and infrastructure bodies and informal public engagement, including 2 drop-in sessions in May in Lenham, attended by around 200 people, and a survey sent to people that have signed up for council consultation reminders, about 1,400 people, and also sent via an e-news bulletin. The draft SPD provides further guidance about the policies in the local plan review to assist future planning applications. It cannot create new policies or make development costs more burdensome. The draft SPD is now ready to be consulted upon formally, providing further opportunities for feedback before a final SPD is prepared.
Do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Leader of Council arising from your original question or the reply?
Yes, please. Is the real reason why much of the promised detail is missing in the SPD is just because the evidence base clearly shows that after 6 years that Heathlands is clearly undeliverable, unviable and unsustainable?
Did you wish to repeat the question?
Okay. Is the real reason why much of the promised detail is missing in the SPD is just because the evidence base clearly shows after 6 years that Heathlands is clearly undeliverable, unviable and unsustainable?
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. I mean, the short answer is no. I don't believe there is detail missing. As a member of the steering group that I mentioned, you had the opportunity to comment on a draft in the summer, which you decided not to do. So I'm surprised that you're now raising this question, but the simple answer is no.
Thank you. I've received notification that Mr. Steve Healy wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Heathlands update to Cabinet on the 22nd of January 2025 stated that 75% of the site was secured under options agreements, with the remaining 25% pending until the outcome of the local plan review. The local plan was adopted now over 18 months ago. Can the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness please confirm how much of the remaining 25% has now been secured?
Councillor Wales.
Thank you, Mr. Healy, for your question. Homes England is responsible for securing options and acquiring land from the principal landowners for Heathlands. Whilst the Council has commented on this topic previously, it is not entirely appropriate for the Council to comment upon transactions between two third parties, hence the brevity of my response. To our knowledge, the amount of land under option to Homes England remains unchanged since the last report, and negotiations are ongoing. This does not affect the critical path of the project.
Mr. Healy, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness arising out of your original question or the reply?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. If you've not managed to secure 25% of the remaining land at Heathlands in the 6 years that you've now had to try and secure that land, what makes you think that you're going to secure this in the next few months before you bring forward an outline planning application?
Councillor Wales.
Well, firstly, nothing makes me think I'm going to secure anything because, as I explained, it's Homes England who are going to be securing the land. 6 years is not a long time in planning terms. The whole project is not intended to finalise until 2054 or something of that order. So there is plenty of time for Homes England to secure the rest of the site.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 11. I've received notification that Councillor Harper wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Climate Transition and Nature Recovery. Welcome to the front of the stage, Councillor Rodwell. Wait for the question. I can see you're eagerly anticipating.
I'd just like, on behalf of the independent group, to welcome Rachel to her new job. I think it's well deserved, and I'm sure she's going to make great strides in bringing forward our biodiversity and climate change strategies. But on to the question, which links very much into that, is how are we as a borough going to enable residents to adjust to the cessation of being able to buy new petrol and diesel vehicles in 2030 if there is no adequate charging facilities in place, bearing in mind a large number of residents do not have off-street parking?
Thank you, Councillor Harper, and thank you for your lovely words. There are several factors influencing the pace of EV charging infrastructure rollout across Maidstone. The key opportunities include development of on-street charging facilities and the installation of EV charge points in privately owned spaces and the expansion of EV charging in Maidstone Borough Council owned car parks. So in terms of on-street charging, in line with our new climate change strategy and action plan, we are delivering 35 new on-street charging bays this year through the levy funding. In terms of the privately owned charging, we have scaled up our Solar Together programme this year, and we have targeted all the top-tier households and businesses. Now, this means that all addresses deemed the most likely to accept an offer have been contacted with an invitation to submit an expression of interest for the group purchasing scheme, which also includes EV charge points. All of these addresses have been contacted this year, and the offer has been further enhanced by including the option to pay by credit card for those able to fund their own EV charge point installations. Additionally, we have expanded the EV charging section of our Sustainable Business Directory to improve resident access to information. This now includes a listing that offers EV charge points to businesses by a company called Zapgo. There are a number of different websites and apps available to the general public to help identify options for EV charging across the borough. An action in our updated climate change action plan is to draft an EV strategy for Maidstone, and making information more easily accessible regarding charge points will form parts of this piece of work. In terms of Maidstone Borough Council charging, We will continue to monitor usage across NBC-owned car parks to ensure capacity keeps pace with demand. Now, parking services continue to monitor usage, identifying key car parks for future expansion, as well as tracking usage. So as we know when to invest future expansion as to not carelessly misspend. Now, our last figures show that despite EVs making up to 15.61% of all Maidstone car park users, only 0.5% choose to charge their EVs in council-owned car parks. This suggests that the remainder of all EV motorists choose to either charge at home or at work. Maidstone Council will continue monitoring usage, expanding infrastructure with a data-led approach when necessary.
Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Rodwell, for that informative answer and information. I suppose I have a concern, and I don't know to what extent the councils would perhaps share it, in terms of obviously working with Kent County Council Highways, given the County Council's recent decision that they no longer recognise a climate emergency, and they are planning to withdraw funding, presumably from this type of area of work. And I just wondered if the Cabinet member would agree with me this is a very retrograde step, and that Maidstone Council will put what pressure it can do on Kent County Council to actually push forward with ensuring that we do have a full charging facility across not just Maidstone but the whole of Kent by 2030. Thank you.
May I give a short answer? Yes, I do believe it is a retrograde step, and we will certainly be pursuing in every capacity that we have to ensure that that will proceed. Thank you, Councillor Harper.
Thank you, councillors. Agenda item 12. I call upon the Leader of the Council to submit his report on current issues. Councillor Jeffrey, you may speak for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, welcome to our new councillors. The last 3 months have been focused on local government reorganisation. We're just 6 weeks away now from submitting the business case for Kent and Medway, and Kent leaders have worked up a 3-state and a 4-state solution, both of which have agreed to work up those solutions, both of which have Maidstone in a West Kent unitary with Tunbridge and Walling, Tunbridge Wells and Sevenoaks. There are 3 other bids, including one unitary bid, which is a bit strange, and one from Medway, which would put us with the seaside. Hey, it sounds fun. And Dartford and Gravesham, which I don't think anyone understands. Kent and Medway chiefs have been meeting regularly, including a day-long workshop in London to make sure KPMG have some direction on the work they're doing. We'll be giving fairly regular updates over the coming weeks. I think there's an all-member briefing in 2 weeks' time, and then the plans will come to full council and then the Cabinet for sign-off next month. In terms of Cabinet decisions, we've put out an SPD for HMOs. There are still smaller HMOs being created at quite a speed, but at least we've got some control over the quality of the larger ones. We've got an arts and culture strategy that's been adopted, a comms and engagement strategy, a community grants policy, a community resilience fund. We've started work to identify a Gypsy Roma Travellers site. The house building programme, we've found more sites and agreed those. That continues apace. We've agreed for a memorial to the women murdered as witches 400 years ago, and my call for their pardon seems to have made it into the national press, which is mildly amusing. The Nature Recovery Fund prospectus has been agreed, and we are, as you've heard earlier, moving forward with the SPDs for Lidsing and Heathlands. A couple of other bits. last week, Creative Maidstone started hosting the Tony Hart Centenary exhibition with Caroline Ross's daughter attending. We've been working on nighttime strategy. Maidstone used to be a centre of the disco scene, as some of you will remember. And so we've had some experts down talking to us about that. A quick shout out to the staff around the One Council event, which was fantastic, and awards given there. We've obviously seen across the borough the Raise the Colours campaign, which was started by two far-right activists with some flags now around the borough. I've had a lot of emails from people concerned about this, and I have written to the KCC leader to express those concerns and ask them to remove the flags. I haven't had a reply. We've also had some good news around the Trailblazer money, 20 million over 10 years for Parkwood, Senacre, Shepway. We've got some money coming in for the museum. And finally, we've written to the new Secretary of State at DEFRA requesting that she invites bids for the National Park, National Landscape extensions. And we want, obviously, this is linked to our aspiration for the Green Sand Ridge, Lem Valley to be included in the Kent Downs National Landscape, which has support from the Joint Advisory Committee for the Kent Downs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. I now call upon other group leaders or their representatives to respond, focusing primarily but not exclusively on the issues raised by the leader. You each may speak for up to 5 minutes. I ask Councillor Russell, the leader of the Conservative group, to lead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Leader, for that whistle-stop tour so fast my pen couldn't keep up. Welcome again to the 3 new council members, and welcome to Councillor Rodwell, shall I say, a welcome member to the Cabinet on the front bench there. Local government reorganisation is coming fast. I think we focused today, when we had our overview and scrutiny working group, that you should hopefully know that we're doing on trust, about how we make sure that we continue to give clear messages. I've got some reverb going on there, to our residents, but also very importantly to our staff as we go through this very important process. I know that you will take that on board, and I know that you will be looking to do that for everybody. I think it's just very clear that we don't give opinion as much as we give fact as we go through this process. I note that you sent forward the letter so that we could get the pardon for the ladies that were tried as witches. Just for the record, my group did not want to send this letter. We don't support it. And we don't actually believe that the pardon that you've requested is actually going to do what you want it to do. We don't think that's the mechanism by which to do that at all. We believe they've already been pardoned. As I understand it, they were found not to be witches. Right, let's go on to things that directly benefit our residents and we think directly matter to our residents. I'm sure all of you that drive in and out of Maidstone have been confounded this week by the traffic. I left my house at 7:20 with the honourable intention of driving my son to school instead of him getting the bus. By 8:30, I'd made it to Moat Park and not any further, at which point I said, you better get out and walk all the way up the road to where the Oakwood campus is. Good luck with making it on time. So I think I speak for many of our residents just how bad this has been for us. Now, I do realise that obviously we are not the Highways Authority, and that's a lot to do with KCC and the, plan of the roadworks, if you can call it a plan in its loosest terms. But I think we have a lot of thinking to do, especially as we move forward into what we see as a new local plan. And we need to find a way to put in the Leeds Langley Relief Road or some relief road. Now, I always hear it's coming with houses. It's coming with a large quantum of houses. Guess what? They're coming anyway. You know they're coming anyway. You've got the plan and they're in there. It's not enough. There'll be more. There'll be more after the more and more after the more. So let's start thinking and working with our partners to try and deliver something that the south of the borough really, really would welcome. And I'm sure all of those members, the town centre members that have wards that go into, towards the Week Sheep, they would really come on board with us with that. So I think we could get some support. I know you're going to say lots of houses, but I think we need to have a bit of a recognising of where we're going with this and try and get things that our residents really do need. On that point of us not being the Highways Authority, we obviously need to work with KCC, who are the Highways Authority. Now, I don't think our response to their Reforming Kent consultation was a very good way of starting that. I think we could have given a far more professional response to them. We could have been more welcoming. We could have been more in detail and more showcasing the good work that we've got and how we need to work together as we go forward. My group also are really, really interested in the spend. Look after the pennies and the pounds look after themselves. The Moat Park kiosk came in at £389,000, we heard at the planning pack on the 2nd of December. That's £110,000 overspent. Now, it may be a very fantastic kiosk, but it's the price of more than building a house. We need to look after the pennies. We need to scrutinise the spend and keep on doing it, keep on doing it, keep on doing it. We haven't seen the bill for Maidstone House yet. You know my group doesn't support that, but we need to keep on looking at all of these things as we go forward. We would like to request a full council update on our affordable house programme. I think we would really welcome where we are with that. I know you mentioned new sites. And we really would welcome some vision as we move forward towards local government reorganisation. What are we bringing to the table as Maidstone? What are we taking into that process? What can we be championing and recognising to make sure that we've delivered something for our residents in the last couple of years of this council and hopefully into the future? Thank you.
Very good timing, Councillor Russ. Councillor English, leader of the Liberal Democrat group.
Mr. Mayor, members, I apologise I may not be on particularly scintillating form this evening as I am recovering from a nasty bout of flu. However, let's be clear that local government reorganisation has been a very time-consuming and complex process, and we are still in the dark over many of the outcomes. Where we are in a somewhat stronger position, well, a much stronger position, is with our own community governance review, which is moving rapidly towards a conclusion, and we should have the outcome of that reported to Democracy and General Purposes Committee fairly soon. I suspect that in certain parish quarters there will be sighs of relief with the recommendation, but I don't want to spoil the final line. One can have all the aspirations one likes in local government, but at the end of the day, the thing that people look at really is not the manifesto promises, or what you might do or could do, it's what you have done. And what we've been trying to concentrate on in administration is delivery. And in that sense, three particular areas. I'll start my own area. Waste and recycling has significantly improved, and the figures are the best they have been for decades. However, that's no reason to rest. We need to do serious work on improving the recycling figures. We also will be moving on. We've already got the materials to some major work on environmental enforcement. Actually, we could probably give some of those environmental enforcement cameras KCC Highways, because they would actually meet the specification for putting a speed camera in at Chills Crescent, but that's another story. Turning to parks and recreation, yes, we have invested a lot of money in Moat Park, and we will continue to invest money in Moat Park. What Moat Park is, on various surveys, the second or third most popular and most visited park in the United Kingdom. It needs investment. It's a lot of investment, and the important thing is, I'm not saying that the amount of money one spends is unimportant, but the important thing is the amount one gets back after the spend. And we will be looking at significant further improvements, not unconnected with the former Willington Street Park and Ride site, hopefully coming forward. On KCC Highways, I would say that some of the problem we've been having is down to the fact the diversion routes have not been consistently signed. It was very noble of Councillor Springett to ring up Kent Highways and say that if you don't get it sorted out, I'm going out in a high-vis jacket in the middle of the road with a sign to tell people where to go. KCC then got their finger out, but they've had to be chased up consistently over that sort of issue. Now, I'm not saying that getting their diversions right would solve all the problems, but it's a basic level of administrative competence that we are not seeing from Kent Highways at the moment. Basic levels. Local government, whatever the party's politics, needs to get a certain basic level of competence from officers, and we are not seeing that from KCC Highways. Well, we're not all of KCC Highways, but we're not seeing it across the piece. I could disentangle the arguments on the Leeds Langley bypass, but I would say that Kent County Council, although I've just criticised them, were profoundly unconvinced about the proposals. And I'm a historian of sorts. I am unaware of a single road project since the Roman imperial days that has actually significantly solved a traffic problem. What it does is solve the problem for 24 to 48 months. And after that, the economic development you get with opening a new road actually cancels that out. So I will caution people, go and look at all the history across the world. That's what has happened consistently.
Thank you. Another one who's almost exactly on time. So, Councillor Cleater, the leader of the Labour group.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And like others of all parties, Kent Highways does leave a lot to be desired. They've shut Boxley Road today for 3 weeks. They're going to shut a chunk of Sandlin Road. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get out my house to actually get anywhere. And I think that's what frustrates people, is the lack of planning, is the lack of organisation that says, actually, if you've got an emergency here, you need to sort of change some of the planned stuff. I mean, maybe we should have more women doing it, because I think we'd have probably organised it better, Claudine, Rachel, you know, because common sense seems to have gone out the window. And in terms of consulting with KCC, those of us on the planning committee have a heart attack if they actually respond to anything that we put into them. And the problems have been long-standing. When I worked in property finance at KCC many, many moons ago, I used to collect the rent for the houses that were going to be demolished in Campbell Road and Brunswick Street for the inner ring road that has been planned. So there seems to be lots of plans that go on, but never happens. And I think that's why people are getting frustrated. In terms of the Trailblazer funding, I think this is really good news. £20 million to the most deprived area. And it's not about us deciding where it goes, it's about talking to the community and saying, what do you need? And I think that's something we all need to remember sometimes. We all have our pet projects, and I'm one of them, you know, let's be honest, that actually we need to ask people what they need, what's important to them. And certainly the people I've spoken to, it's about the young people. The old saying, the devil makes work for idle hands, and I think that's very true in some areas. And I hate to go back to KCC here, but the cuts in youth offending, the cuts and decimation of youth services has caused a major problem for district and boroughs throughout Kent, and sometimes leaves us picking up the pieces and doing work that maybe, if it had been a more joined up approach, we could have had some traction. I am going to swear and say the word catapults. Cross-party, and I know that Helen Whately, Helen Grant, councillors of all parties are really worrying, not just in the urban areas, but in the rural areas. Someone is going to get killed soon with these catapults. And I think for those, and I understand there is a sport of catapulting, never heard of it myself, but I'll, take on board. It's going to lead to huge restrictions if people do not do things wisely. And I think people who start hurting animals will soon work their way up to property damage, to actually inflicting injury on people. So again, we're back to, if this is kids doing this, we need to give them something else to do. And that links back to the Trailblazer funding, where I think it's really important. What the locals are telling me, they want something for the kids to do. They want them to get trained. Some people are not all academic. They don't all want to go to university, but they do have skills. So I think that's something we should work with the community for. And again, for our group, the most important thing, and I do agree with Councillor Russell, we need to be moving on our house building, our 1,000 affordable homes. One of the biggest strains on the budget for any council is our temporary accommodation bill. It's usually about £1 million every year, which is a lot of money for a district and borough, and we need to get our own housing stock for working people in this area to be able to afford to live and work in the Maidstone borough. I think that's really, really critical. We are seeing investment along that M20 corridor, Panettone, or is that a cake I've just said? Anyway, we know the organisation, they're investing in here. We need to have the affordable homes so that people can afford to live and work in the area, and also that then reduces the amount of travelling. And again, I'm sure we'll have very robust discussions at Joint Transportation Board about lovely public transport, because we'd like some. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cleater. Councillor Harper, the leader of the Independent Fenton Oakwood Group.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a lot being said. I'll just start off with about roads. Having witnessed it last week, for just over a week, outside where I live in Oakwood Road, Queen's Road was closed off with no warning. The first I knew about it, actually I was coming back to Maidstone and got stuck for an hour, realising Queen's Road was closed and you couldn't actually go anywhere. And this affecting Oakwood Road, where only a fortnight before we'd had a major accident with 2 schoolgirls having to be hospitalised. The problems we have in this borough, as has been pointed out, with our highways is such that when we do give consideration tomorrow night to the start of the local plan process going ahead, we really have to think, and Councillor Keeley's not here tonight, about roads and about the infrastructure, because without that, it's pointless. You could build 100,000 homes, but no one's going anywhere if our existing population can't move around adequately. That brings me on to thinking about local government reform, and I thank Stuart for the work he's doing on behalf of us as a council. And we seem to have a choice coming up, or the government will give us a choice ultimately. We can either head off to Sevenoaks or go down to the Romney Marsh. So, it will be one way or another. Hopefully it will be the right decision ultimately for us, and our successors will need to make the best of it they can do for the residents of the current Maidstone borough. Looks like we might know about town council fairly soon. I know we've got a working party tomorrow to look into that. Hopefully we may move to the next stage and do a full consultation with residents in the unparished part of Maidstone, because that would help address what's going to be a clear democratic deficit if we don't do anything. Flags, well, obviously I'm, as you can see from my motion later on the agenda, extremely concerned about the number of flags flying and the implications of it, and we will discuss that later on. House building, completely agree with Maureen, but it should be social housing as opposed to affordable, because social housing is what people can afford. call it council housing, social housing, that is what we need here. Maidstone, like lots of authorities of it up until the 60s, was quite good on providing council houses. I mean, my colleagues over there, you know, Shepway, Senacre, Park Wood was a really good example of planned social housing. We have some over in my own area in places like Farley Court. We need to expand. I know our initial target was 1,000. We need 2,000, 3,000. We need the homes that when we do our new local plan, people can afford to live here. Anyway, I'll get off my high horse on that. The One Council, I think we need to continue to celebrate our staff. As our residents are moving into unknown territory of local government review, so are our staff. And we have to do everything we can do to support them over the next couple of years as we go through this process. Things no doubt will start to get clearer when we go into the new year. One of the things we do need to think about is legacy, because our colleagues in West Kent are pushing in legacy projects. So Tunbridge and Malling are bringing forward and will be building a new leisure centre. Anyway, I won't say any more about that. I did. Sevenoaks District Council announced they're pushing ahead with the Swanley redevelopment and building a hotel-based approach to regenerate Swanley. And Tunbridge Wells and other authorities are looking at what they can do for big legacies so that people will remember where they live with pride. We need to do the same for Maidstone, and it may be pushing really forward around around council housing. That might be the best thing we can do for our residents, is build up a big estate of council houses between now and 2028, because if we could do that, then we're safeguarding Maidstone for its residents going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, your first opportunity, Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You will be unsurprised to know, given the shortness of our tenure at the moment, this is going to be short and fairly sweet, but there are a couple of points that I wanted to get across. It's a great honour and pleasure as 3 recently elected councillors to be representing our ward as Reform UK and attend our first full Maidstone Borough Council meeting. We have been elected with a significant mandate within the ward of Harrietsham, Lynn and North Downs, and will do our level best to represent them and repay the faith they have entrusted in us. I would like to extend the thanks to the NBC teams and other councillors that have warmly welcomed us as we set out on this new chapter of political history within Maidstone. Our opposition to the Heathlands development is well documented, and we look forward to discussing this and informing the debate on a range of other important topics that will impact us all in so many ways over the coming months and years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now open this item to questions from... I now open this item to questions from council members for a period of 15 minutes. Questions may be on any subject relevant to the role of the leader. I see my deputy wishes to start.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have a question to the leader concerning a really quite an important issue for my area, which also extends to my fellow, for the fellow member for Lewes and Linton, and I'm sure for Coxheath and also for Bournemouth-Chelsea. And that is that in the last strategic bidding round, KCC approached this council with a view to making safety improvements and reconfiguring the Lewes and Linton, the Linton Crossroads. It's something which is a great aspiration to all of the parishes that surround the junction, and I just would like to ask the leader whether we have his support in ensuring that KCC are fully aware of the fact that we would like to move this forward. We do not wish to turn this bid down and do whatever we can to progress this scheme.
Councillor Jeffrey.
I mean, there is obviously the seal bidding round open. Whilst I'm personally quite supportive of the plans around Linton Crossroads, I think it's probably wrong to give the council's view on this in terms of the cabinet itself, because there is a bidding round underway and we would be skipping due process. So I think I thank you for the comments, but in terms of good governance, we need to see the full range of bids and make an appropriate decision when they come in. Clearly, Kent County Council are aware. I speak with the director there fairly regularly, if not every day, given Queen's Road at the moment. So they are in communication with us.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Clark?
Well, I just really wanted to say that it is an aspiration for us. And in talks with KCC, I'm not even sure that they're actually going to make a bid, but it is certainly something that is of great interest to us. There are some initiatives to improve safety at that crossing right at Cornwallis School. We're looking to extend a 30-mile-an-hour limit across the junction as part of planning, and we certainly would like to see that progress under the strategic seal bid. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank you for pointing out the problems of traffic. I mean, the Linton Crossroad have been talked in this council for many years, but actually we also forget that when the Linton Road is shut, it's all the other small roads that are suffering, and the Ploughwent Junction is a bit of a hell when it comes to Linton Crossroad being closed, because an Arctic lorry cannot turn right or left without blocking four-way junctions completely. So I'd love that these junctions would be slightly improved, so actually it wouldn't stuck our residents for hours on end, because it's usually hours by the time they get to it.
Is there a particular question there? Because I'm sure those of us that have been on the council for years and years and years have discussed this particular nitty-gritty subject at length.
So is the council prepared to actually push on KCCs that the rural roads and Ploughwent Junction in particular be improved?
I think that was broadly the same as the last question. So there are conversations around the seal bidding round with KCC. And yeah, I think the answer stands, and thank you.
I think I can round that up, Councillor Jeffrey, and say you have noted, and Cabinet will have noted those particular issues in question. Any further questions? Councillor Cleater.
Not sure actually whether it's Mr. Nagy, but I'll ask you, Stuart, seeing as you're here as leader. Can the leader tell me what conversations have been had with Kent Police regarding the reassignment of neighbourhood teams to general duties under the most appropriate person policy, and what has been put in place, or could you ask them to mitigate the time officers will spend away following the closure of Maidstone Custody Suite? The police station is staying open, but the custody suite is being closed. That is due to close this week.
Councillor Jeffrey, did you want to pass this to another Cabinet member?
Yeah, I was just looking for Dave. It's gone. Councillor Cleater, we can give you a briefing. I'm aware that certainly the officers have had conversations with Kent Police over that. It's probably quite a complex answer, and I don't have the detail, hence me looking around for Councillor Nagy. So we will get an answer to you on that.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Therefore, I close that item. Item 13. It's a particularly pertinent one for me, personally. I've been on this council something Councillor Wales raised earlier on, that planning is a long, long process. This particular item is obviously about my ward. So I speak very personally on this subject. This item has been going on for possibly 10, if not longer, years. So it is my privilege and pleasure to welcome Councillor Harwood to move the recommendation of the Cabinet relating to the Headcourt Neighbourhood Plan.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I knew this would be a subject close to your heart, and I'll probably get an introduction. But as the Mayor has pointed out, it has been a very long and tortuous path getting us to where we are today. And the final hurdle of making or adopting the Headcourt Local Plan is a vote of the full council, which we are doing hopefully now. So on your papers from pages 13 to 16, there's agenda item 13. There's a lot of 13s involved in this, Mr. Mayor. I'm just a bit worried. I want to move that the Headcourt Neighbourhood Plan be made or adopted by this council. Thank you.
Is that seconded? Councillor English. Did you wish to speak or? No, okay. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? No. Is the recommendation agreed? Agreed. Thank you so much. Agenda item 14. I call upon Councillor Field's new haircut to move the recommendation to Audit, Governance and Standards Committee relating to the committee's annual report to Council 2024-25, recommendation on page 17.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the comedic reference to the photo, I imagine, in the report. Yep, I'm happy to commend the report to Council. I'd like to draw Councillors' attention to a couple of issues in the report. I'm quite proud, as are members of the committee, of our track record on training and improving our own knowledge and skills. I'd also like to take the opportunity to commend the work of the finance and audit teams that support our work, in particular achieving the audit being submitted on time, which many members will be aware is something of a challenge for most local authorities in England at the moment, so that is no mean feat. With that, I move that the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee annual report to Council for 2024-25, which demonstrates how the committee discharged its duties during 24-25, be noted.
Is that seconded? Councillor Greenan. Thank you. Is that recommendation agreed? Item 15. I call upon Councillor Rodwell to move the motion relating to practical measures on rights of nature.
Oh, it's on again. I said I have volume. When I submitted this motion, I wasn't expecting to be delivering this from the front row. Having said this, I do feel it's important to present it and engage in dialogue with my colleagues, because I know that we can find common ground when we communicate, listen and seek to understand each other. Now, I want to stress that this motion is not about seeking legal personhood of any natural entity, which would require primary legislation, which we as a council, we do not have the power to grant. Unlike KCC, we have not rescinded our declaration of climate emergency and biodiversity collapse. This council, regardless of our political differences, in 2019, we came together and we committed to ensure we continue to work towards long-term future resilience, safeguarding all our communities as we face climate change and the alarming decline of species in the UK. Now, we have already recognised that nature has rights and that we will make our decisions based on both the human rights within our community, but also the rights of the natural world that sustains it. And it's now in our corporate strategy, which we passed earlier this year. So, while our statement in the corporate strategy is groundbreaking, it holds no weight without taking those first practical steps towards action. So this motion is part of that commitment and the logical next step to further those ambitions. What can we do as Maidstone Borough Council is recognise that nature has rights. We are thinking more coherently and more specifically about what we can do to ensure that they are upheld. Now, a potential outcome of this motion could be appointing an advocate or a guardian within the council. This ensures that where applicable, we would fully take into consideration the environmental impact of our decision making, with the added potential of engaging our communities in a much more meaningful approach of advocacy, of guardianship, and working together to safeguard our local natural environments. We could, for instance, work towards an SPD for nature or similar policies. However, first there is a body of work to do, to begin to forge a clear pathway that we can follow to yield tangible and positive results. And hence I urge my colleagues to support my motion. The objectives, I should say, of this motion are vague to allow council staff and experts in this field the flexibility to take this concept forward and propose solutions that those delivering it believe would be most impactful. So I therefore propose that this council's corporate strategy supports the global movement for rights of nature as a framework for rethinking the relationship between human beings and the rest of the world. This council would explore measures to embed the rights of nature in policy and practice where this is possible and practical to do so. Thank you. I would like a right to reply at the end of the debate, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
By all means.
Thank you.
And Councillor Clark informs me he wishes to second the motion and also reserve his right so we can look forward to some form of debate. So in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 12.9.1, there will now be a debate on the motion, during which the motion may be amended or withdrawn. At the conclusion of the debate, in accordance with Procedure 12.9.3, if there is no proposal to refer the matter directly to Cabinet, I will refer the matter to the relevant Policy Advisory Committee, having sought advice from the officers. So, ladies and gentlemen, who wishes to raise the first question? Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for this motion. Here we are with another motion to yourselves. I urge you to stop doing this. You are the administration. It's a cabinet-led council. You can put these things in. You have the power to do that. We don't need to have litany after litany after litany of motions to yourselves. On the motion in particular, here, I'm afraid it's another word salad for me. I don't get what we're going for here. I get the point that it was made to be vague, but it is very vague to the point that I don't actually know what it's asking me to support or not support. I don't think this council goes around, and I will use the word guardian, which Councillor Rodwell said, not being guardians of nature. I'm a farmer, I'm guardian of nature, but we need a reality check. Councillor Wells builds houses. Councillor Harwood does planning, but yet I sit in planning and I hear Councillor Harwood say about the need for the things for nature, for the bird, for the bat boxes, for the wood piles, for the insects. I hear that all the time, so I know that he having that thought process in that committee. He's being a guardian of nature. I think we're all doing this anyway. I don't see that we need to have another motion to yourselves to try and do this work, to send it through the committees for something that I don't understand what we're actually trying to do here. On that basis, unless someone can explain it to me in a lot more detail and what the practical steps you're trying to do here are, I'm afraid I'll be voting against it.
Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an interesting motion. I think things have moved forward since we last considered this in sort of 2023. I attended the Friends of the Medway conference on Source to Sea. I know some of my colleagues opposite were there as well, and that was a very interesting day, and it to some extent changed my mind about the need for the council to be more proactive and to actually take a lead on behalf of, in that case, on behalf of Louis Medway, and to actually see ourselves as voicing the needs of that river. That day ended with us going and standing on Alresford Bridge and people being asked to make a pledge as to what they might do following on from that. And unfortunately, as we were doing that, we could see pollution and oil slick or something flowing down the Medway, which to me highlighted the real problems we've got. I mean, the Medway River is just one item. Obviously, you know, nature clearly is everywhere around us. So I do think we need to be practical. We need to push forward with this. And perhaps things like, in terms of the urban area where people might not think so much of nature, working on how people can relate to nature more. So perhaps looking at ecological surveys with Kent Wildlife around our urban part of the town, where the bulk of our residents do live, and where probably, if anywhere, we need to be brought nearer to nature so that we can actually cherish and nurture it. So I, for one, will be supporting this. Thank you.
I have three further speakers, Councillor Dubinsky, English and Harwood. Is there anybody else further wishing to speak? Councillor Gooch, Povey. Thompson. Okay. Okay, Councillor Dubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Rodwell, in your preamble, you seemed, or for my clarification on this, you seem to be suggesting that the council should employ another resource in order to look after this particular thing. I thought that's what you said earlier on. That seemed to be an implication. Okay, so that's fine. That was my only question. Thank you.
English.
Those of you who were here at the time and with long memories will remember that when this was previously discussed, the Liberal Democrat group voted against it because we were then talking about personhood, which is we were talking about personhood in relation to the rights of nature. So that is a much more complex and difficult concept. The concept we're talking about today is not difficult to understand. It's based quite firmly on religious and moral principles of stewardship of God's created earth, if I can pick up from something said by the minister earlier. Now, there are ways and means of doing this, but essentially what we're trying to do is deal with the fact that through some oversights that we did oppose at the time, the local plan, the original one, not necessarily, and the review, are a bit flawed on protecting nature and the rural in particular, but not just the rural in particular, landscape of the borough. And we are told time and time again by certain people in the council we don't need policies. and then we trip over because we haven't got policies. Now, they do take time. I mean, take a slight sidestep, preparation of conservation area appraisals takes a huge amount of time. But good job I had one in the Holy Trinity area, because we actually won a HMO appeal on conservation grounds. We wouldn't have won it on highways or parking grounds, we won it on conservation grounds. So we need a full suite of policies, not just to inform planning, but to inform what we actually do, and prevent situations where cabinet members, and I won't say who, can walk into a town centre member's ward, rip up goodness knows how much vegetation and landscaping without any consultation with the local members, and replace it with barren stone. That's what's happened a number of times. And yes, the Borough Council is now doing quite well in environmental protection. We're almost at the leading edge. However, very recently that has not been the case. We were mowing areas quite expensively within a centimetre of their life and killing a great number of trees. We need to make sure we do better. Some members opposite are saying, oh, trees, they're not important. I can see it on their faces written there. Well, actually they are, for all sorts of reasons. So I think we need, if there are problems with this, discuss them at panel.
Thank you, just on time. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will try and answer Councillor Russell as to what's different this time. You know, like you, I am concerned about having lots of declarations on things. We've got a climate change and biodiversity declaration. We've got a nature recovery declaration we made in 2024, but nature isn't recovering. Nature is in catastrophic decline, even on protected sites where there is no obvious harm. Biodiversity and biomass is shrinking and it's going downhill fast. I think this motion is deliberately open-ended and vague, for want of a better word, so that there can be a debate further down the line in the policy advisory committees and so on about what can we do that actually will turn this around and start to make a difference. Because I think that there is a term of shifting baseline syndrome where young people today don't remember, because they've never experienced walking into a field full of butterflies. They don't remember going into a residential area around Maidstone with screaming swifts overhead and house martin nests on every house. But a number of us who aren't that old remember when that was normal, when every garden had a hedgehog in it, and they have gone. And I think we've really got to think about the way that we do this. And the supplementary planning document was mentioned because, frankly, I don't want Councillor Russell to be in every planning committee saying, we need to do this, we need this policy and whatever, because how many years have we been banging on about this and it's still not on the checklist, it's still not happening. And I actually think that councillors across the political spectrum have been at the cutting edge of wildlife issues, no matter what their political. When I first came onto this council, Councillor Nightingale was always my ally in fighting for wildlife. But this isn't just about councillors and what comes to committee. It's about day-to-day officer activity out there managing sites. It's about our contractors. It's about making sure the things we do. It's about the influence we have with stakeholders and partners, such as KCC, which are, again, not at the cutting edge of the environment, frankly. So I think, give it a chance. Let's have a discussion, go through the process and see if we can come up with some real innovations that actually make a difference and aren't just another piece of paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In fact, I'd also like to thank Councillor Harwood because you've put quite a lot of meat on the bones. Because to begin with, I was feeling, yes, it's a very well-meaning motion, but it lacks clarity of purpose. I felt it was all ever so airy-fairy, but I must thank you, Councillor Harwood, for making me think it through. Having said that, I think this would have had an easier passage through council had it had that clarity, had it had that backing, if you like. I would just like to ask, have you got in your mind what officer time will be freed up to allow for this additional thinking and this additional endorsement, if you like, because that's my concern as well. Thank you.
Councillor Povey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully understand the calls that we're guardians for nature. You know, we've all got a responsibility to see this green and beautiful planet handed on to our children and our grandchildren, and I'm sure everybody in the room appreciates that. I have 7.5 metres from my property. There's an Atcos barn where it was disused for 20 years virtually. We used to see badgers, bats and owls all coming out of that barn. We used to take great joy of watching them on our CCTV cameras. The reason why that no longer happens is probably a topic for another day. My concerns over the vagueness of the proposition and the addition of red tape. I find myself quite aligned with Councillor Russell. I think, you know, councillors have enough red tape to deal with, and I struggle to see the benefits. You know, when I was elected as a councillor, I'm trying to adopt a very simple philosophy. If there's a proposal on the table, do we understand the cost? Do we understand the impact? Do we understand whether we're writing an open cheque or not? And will our residents appreciate the impact of that? And I'm afraid in this situation, with the vagueness of the proposal, I struggle to see that. So I'm afraid I will be voting against the proposal from what I can see. Thank you.
I just wish to remind members that there will be no vote on the principle because I will be referring it. Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm grateful to the previous speaker for referring to remarks that he made in public in recent days. My opinion is that we shouldn't be writing an open cheque generically embedding the policies of an organisation over which we have no control. Important comments, Mr. Mayor. We've heard questions about the practical nature and the way in which we proceed with the philosophical basis of our corporate strategy and the action plan that we have brought forward to this council. It is because we take our corporate responsibilities seriously that we must embed rights of nature and the actions following that in our practice. In recent years, we've seen a troubling pattern across politics and the economy alike. Companies and even some new political movements have adopted the corporate form not to create value for communities, but to shield decision makers from accountability. Power is increasingly exercised through limited companies with few directors, no person with significant control and no direct duty to people or place. These are entities with legal rights but no skin in the game, no soil under their nails. When politics starts to look like that, when parties and policy alike are treated as marketing brands rather than living communities, our democracy is at risk of becoming hollow. Our residents, our rivers, our countryside are reduced to backdrops for balance sheets and polling headlines, whereas the places, we hold the places that sustain us, the rivers that give us water, the ground that absorbs our rain, the trees that cool our towns have recognised standing, Mr. Mayor. It means that when we make decisions, we do so in formalised consideration that the living systems that make life on earth and life in our borough possible. This is not anti-business, it's not anti-good sense, it's not anti-good governance, it's pro-responsibility. It's what good business now calls sustainability and risk management. Against the better judgment of many in this chamber, we already grant corporations the legal status of persons with rights and protections. Surely it is not unreasonable to extend a measure of recognition to the ecosystems without which life is impossible. We're about grounding our governance in place, Mr. Mayor. This place and this planet, not some abstractions, our duty of care runs deeper than the balance sheets. It runs into our soil and the water table. This is good stewardship, it is good economics, it is sound democracy for the people of this borough. Our aim is to reconnect the decisions that we make to the reality that sustains business, household and this community. Embedding the policies of an organisation over which we have no control, Mr Mayor. I refer members here to references at Companies House to company number 11694875 for an evaluation of that claim. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Well timed, Councillor Thompson. I see there's been no further questions. Hang on, there's one last minute. Councillor Cleater.
Yeah, sorry, Mr Mayor. I'm just seeking some clarification here. Because why have we just had a 20-odd minute debate if we were going to refer it to Cabinet anyway? I think that should have been made clear, because I'd have happily moved that. And I know we all want to get everyone's views, but really, if we were going to refer it to Cabinet, which I think is what you indicated when you spoke, then we've just had 20 minutes of debate when it's going to go to Cabinet anyway. And I haven't got a problem with that, to be honest. Right, well, I'm just seeking clarification what Mr Mayor was intended to do.
It is our normal process for motions to be referred to Cabinet, but I have the right to refer it to Policy Advisory Committee, which I feel in the circumstances will be better debated in such a place, so there is wider consultation. So therefore, on the basis of that, I get your point, Councillor Cleater, but if it does go to Policy Advisory Committee, there's more opportunities for more members to debate it at length. On the basis of that, before we round up and I ask Councillor Rodwell to do so, Councillor Clark has the right, as he seconded the motion, and he wishes to round up himself.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, so I'm going to cut it brief, but I do want to make a few points here. This is really about reinforcing nature as a central pillar for our policy development, because really, if there's a cost to nature, it actually costs us. Even though in the past, Industrial Revolution, it was all about where can you monetize, where can you push the boundaries, where can you progress. And I think we're now starting to realize that sometimes by sidestepping nature and not looking at the consequences, we actually cause ourselves as more harm than good. I will mention about, I've got a statistic, vertebrate wildlife populations plummeted nearly 70% on average globally since 1970. As a kid, I used to drive over to Broomfield Road in Kingswood to see my nan. We could not get to her address if we didn't have water in our windscreen washer jets, because the screen would be absolutely 100% blocked by the time we got there, cutting through the cornfields by Horseshoe Lane there. Today, I can take my kids right the way through there, and we can drive on to Canterbury and we might see a couple of splats on the windscreen. I think that really does highlight the fact that we have got an emergency here. There was mention earlier about this part of policy, are we doing this? And it was mentioned about the Councillor Harwood mentioning about swift bricks and bat boxes in planning. And I think that actually highlights and strengthens this point, because perhaps that should already be there. Perhaps Councillor Harwood, if he doesn't turn up one day and he doesn't say it, do we get the bat boxes? Do we get the swift bricks? Are we really thinking about that? Individual members can be responsible, but at the end of the day, we want this to be absolutely inscribed into what we're doing as a council. In terms of myself, conservation area plans, they're going through at the moment. 10 years ago, we were working on the local plan that was adopted in 2017, and at that time, I tried to get conservation area plans for change, or one in particular where my ward is, changed. I worked with the member who's now currently the member for Toggle, and other members in this room about increasing protection as part of the conservation area plan. I was told at the time we couldn't do that. We can only do that when it comes around, but make your point now and that can be adopted when it comes around. So we worked with Landscape of Local Value. We've got whole swathes of the Lewes Valley protected under Landscape of Local Value, but I kind of feel a little bit sad because if the members that have that history weren't here, when the conservation area plan came back to us, it didn't have any of that included. So maybe that's one of the things we need to look at. Perhaps if we're looking at opportunities like landscape and local value, where does that get picked up on elsewhere in the council? So I just wanted to endorse the points that were raised by Councillor Rodwell. Thank you.
Councillor Rodwell, you have the right.
Yes, in rounding up, just want to thank everyone for your comments. We are keen to explore what these practical steps would be. This council would take into account the views and suggestions made in the chamber this evening. There seems to be two broad areas to investigate: policy development and the concept of guardianship of nature, rather than it just being a thing that is owned and protected by environmental laws, which are clearly not sufficient. Would a mechanism of advocacy ensure that rights of nature are upheld? It's not about red tape. We need to work through our policies to check that they really do take into account the rights of nature, and to consider whether we need additional policies such as supplementary planning document for nature. As a country, we are falling behind the EU on implementing environmental laws and protections, and the loopholes in environmental laws are causing significant environmental harm. Since Brexit, the EU has brought forward 28 new upgraded pieces of environmental legislation that the UK has not adopted. If anything, as Councillor Hardwood was saying, we are regressing, and we're seeing the evidence in our fields and in our hedgerows. So if anything, we need to think differently about how we can actually protect our natural world, because clearly environmental laws as they stand are not, and they're not working. So if there's not the will to adhere to them, then it's not going to happen. Guardianship and advocacy is a concept long associated with human rights, just like appointing a guardian for looked after children, for instance. The same can be true for nature, which is often simply treated as a pleasant amenity for humans to enjoy, or an expendable resource at our fingertips. I would like us to look at what the concept of guardianship actually means in practice, and what that role would be in terms of council remit, and its correlation as well with the community groups and external agencies. How would it all fit? So irrespective of our views of whether nature has legal standing, this motion, as the previous one on this subject, just recognises the concepts of rights of nature, and this living system that we call nature has a right to exist, persist, maintain and regenerate its vital cycles. It's worth remembering that rights are rarely absolute, and rights often have to be balanced. There has to be legitimacy and there has to be proportionality. I recognise that. I call upon members across the chamber to support this motion. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for that debate. I therefore refer the matter directly to the relevant Policy Advisory Committee, having sought advice from the officers. I now move on to agenda item 16. I call upon Councillor Harper to move the motion relating to community cohesion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since the Brexit debate in 2016, there's been a growing levels of intolerance in our society. This has been highlighted over this summer when we have seen an already fragile civic society weakened further by the migration debate. I am proud to be English and British. Our country and borough is made up of many cultures and ethnic groups, and this diversity should be celebrated. In Maidstone, we have had Lamella since 2003, which was started by my friend Mirelle de Souza. Since then, our town has become increasingly multicultural. I was looking at a few census figures. Back in 2011, under 2% of our population across the borough was foreign born. In 2021, it was just under 6%. And in that census, over 10% of our population considered itself to be from an ethnic community. and therefore the nature of our population is becoming much more multicultural, and I think that's to be welcomed. Without previous immigration to the UK, we would not have a health service. Anybody who goes to Maidstone Hospital would see that for themselves. We would not have a care sector. Anybody who needs or knows people reliant on it would know again. Without immigration, that would not have happened. And we would be seeing the negative impact on a large scale of our ageing population. Migration has been a factor of history since the dawn of time. It is not particularly new. More recently, our council, through our arts and cultural policy, which I kicked off back in 2019, has been working constantly to celebrate our diverse and rich communities. And we recently updated it and to continue that theme. However, people are contacting and raising with me concerns on the current developing trend of intransigence and reducing toleration towards one another. My in-laws are from Northern Ireland, where I travel a lot, and I see the use of flags there, not to unify, but to divide communities, to denote territory, and frequently in an aggressive and intimidatory way, especially from people from an alternative culture. Unfortunately, we are now witnessing in England the use of the Union flag and the flag of St George being used in the same manner, not to express national pride, but increasingly to denote territory and also to inflame the asylum seekers debate. There must be no place for hatred in our society. Look at history and we see where it's led in the past. Nazi Germany and then more recently to the collapse of Yugoslavia. Trust, respect and compassion are amongst the bedrocks of being British and need to be supported. I want this council tonight to say stop. We all live on a small island and a small borough, and we need to respect and celebrate each other. We can do a few simple things, as I pointed out in the motion. We can present the facts around migration, current and recent, in an impartial way so people can understand all the issues. We can address and recognise the concerns of minority cultures in our borough in an increasingly hostile environment. And we can promote cultural awareness and celebrate diversity. As I say, we have our arts and culture strategy. We perhaps need to look at ways we can enhance and push forward with some of the policies in that to address these issues and to celebrate our communities in this borough. We can also use the council's communication channels to present facts around migration and through partnership working engender trust, respect and compassion. You may not all agree with all I've had to say, but hopefully we can all unite around the 3 recommendations to enhance our communities and support community cohesion. I move the 3 recommendations and reserve my right to reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. I understand, Councillor Millen, you wish to second the motion. Do you wish to speak? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm proud to second this motion because it proposes 3 clear, reasonable actions that fall well within our powers as a local authority. It supports our legal duty by ensuring that no part of our community feels ignored, misrepresented or unsafe. It also strengthens our existing cultural and cohesion strategies to promote inclusion and shared community identity. But this isn't just about policy, it's about personal. Like many in our borough, I wasn't born here. My father's grandparents left Scotland in 1855 searching for a better life. My mother's family left Birmingham in the 70s as £10 Poms searching for a better life. And like them, I find myself in a different country than I was born, searching for a better life. Sadly, I increasingly find myself in conversations where people list all the problems they think are caused by migrants, not realising that they're talking to one. When I tell them that I wasn't born here, they say, "Oh, not you." And I know what that means. I'm considered safe because I'm white and sound a certain way. But even then, I don't always feel safe. That's why this motion matters. Because symbols like flags are powerful, and when they are used in ways that mimic territorial displays or are co-opted to promote misinformation and hate, they can and do make people feel unsafe and unwelcome. And as a council, we have the power and the responsibility to manage the use of public space in a way that promotes safety and inclusion for all residents. I have had more emails about litter bins than most other issues. Since we lost bins on lampposts, we've seen our Fant streets suffer with increased litter. And now flags are hanging on those same lampposts, and instead we're having to deal with increased fear, division, and tension. People who care about this community are out picking up litter, volunteering at food banks, nature reserves, and winter shelters. That's what real community care looks like, not scampering up a ladder at 2 a.m. The flag has been co-opted and used to promote lies about protecting women and girls. Violence against women and girls is a serious and urgent issue, but it will never be solved by targeting refugees, Muslims, and migrants. Blaming them distracts from tackling the deep-rooted causes of abuse and from holding those truly responsible to account. We have a responsibility as councillors to present factual information, celebrate diversity, and address the legitimate concerns of our residents, to ensure everyone in Maidstone feels safe, respected, and represented, and reaffirms our legal and moral responsibility to build a welcoming, informed, and united borough. We're not an island of strangers like the Prime Minister claims. We're all someone's daughter. We're all someone's son. We're not going to sit in silence, and we're not going to live in fear. I hope you'll support this important motion, and I thank Councillor Harper for moving it.
Thank you very much. I understand, Councillor English, you already wish to get started. Are there any more wishing to debate? Councillor Perry,
I just wondered, Mr. Mayor,
I'll take you after Councillor English.
I was just wondering, Mr. Mayor, what your intention was in terms of referring this, because I'm not sure I'm fit enough to do an hour's debate. So if I have to, I may have to leave. So I just apologise. I just have to apologise in advance if I have to leave if this drags on. So I actually think the proper place to have this discussion, because it is a very emotive subject, is at the Policy Advisory Committee and not in the full council, where people are often on both sides of the argument tempted to play to the gallery. I think it should be referred without further discussion, if at all possible, and because I don't think anything will be learnt from a discussion tonight. What we need is proper, considered discussion about what the council can and can't do, what it should do, and how it explains what it's doing, so it's not misinterpreted. So I urge you to refer it now.
I'll just, momentary pause, I'll just check with officers. Ladies and gentlemen, there were a number of people that did put up their hands, but I think Councillor English has raised a very valid point, and I did see an element of sympathy towards that point, that I should immediately refer to Policy Advisory Committee as soon as possible. Is there anybody else wishing to dissent from that sentiment? In that case, I therefore refer the matter directly to a Policy Advisory Committee on the matter. Which will therefore allow fuller, longer and better debate on the matter. Agenda item 16 has now been passed to Policy and Advisory Committee. Agenda 17, I call on the Director of Strategy, Insight and Governance to submit the reports on the review of the allocation of seats on committees recommendations as per page 35.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I commend the report and updated appendices as circulated to Council.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jeffries, move.
Yeah, I move that the final allocation of seats on the committees be as set out in Appendix 2, which has been circulated separately, and that the wishes of the group leaders regarding appointments to committees as set out in Appendix 3, which has been circulated separately, be accepted.
Seconded by Councillor English. Anyone else wish to speak on the matter? No. Agenda item 18. Oh. Is that agreed? Agenda item 18. I call upon the Leader of Council to move the report on page 41, setting out details of urgent decisions taken by the Cabinet between the 1st of May 25 and the 3rd of October 25 be noted.
Thank you. I move that the report setting out the details of urgent decisions taken by the Cabinet between the 1st of May 25 and 3rd of October 25 be noted.
Seconded by Councillor English. Is that agreed? Ladies and gentlemen, I declare the meeting closed.